You have to excuse my English, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm a little bit out of practice. So some of you have to help me maybe with the one or other word.
Very good.
I try hard. However, the last member of my family who tried to make it to the British Isles stranded at Dunkirk. He never made it across the channel. I don't understand his problems because for me it was quite easy. I just booked a ticket from Berlin to London and here I am. It's nice to be in London today. Times are changing, fortunately. Well, some 10 years ago, when we all were in this financial crisis, Lehman Brothers went bankrupt and so on, there was a serious discussion in Europe about the future of the euro. And Angela Merkel, she said in the last 10 years, two very important and for her very challenging sentences. The first sentence was, at that time, that she said, well, we are in tough times, we have to manage, but there is no alternative to the European currency. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the initial initiative or the initial moment when a lot of people in Germany said, no, there is always an alternative for each and everything, and therefore the alternative for Germany, AfD, Alternative für Deutschland, was found, and here we are. We expressed at that time and still today our deep concern about a currency where each and everybody who is a bit in the financial business will tell you it won't work. By the way, we had already two currency unions before. Maybe nobody knows it, but we had the so-called Latin currency union in the 19th century where Italy, Monaco and France, as far as I remember, tried to establish one currency and it failed, and we had the Scandinavian currency union in the 19th century as well, as far as I remember, and it failed as well. Now Sweden, Norway and so on, they had their own currencies later on. And we are convinced that the euro will fail as well. And there is one simple example which makes it understand for each and everybody. When you take a normal worker, a normal engineer in a car shop, in a repair shop, let's say in Romania, the chap, for his work, he will be paid with about 300 to 350 euros. The same guy at the Atlantic coast in France earns for the same work he's doing about 3,000 euros. How should you express the productivity of both of them in one coin, in one currency? It's impossible. You can't do that. And therefore, the euro will fail. It's only a question of time. And what we have done at that time, the German government, and frankly, I never expected that the German government will behave so, was that to bail out, I think is the word, the big banks in Germany and in France and elsewhere. The governments, like in your country, in UK as well, they guaranteed the debts of the Deutsche Bank and others. And we accepted each and every step and move to keep the euro alive. And we ignored that what we have promised with the Maastricht Treaty, that no other country will be responsible or in charge for the debts of another country in the European Union. And within one night, the German Chancellor Merkel and all the others ignored completely what we have signed in the treaty in the 90s. And at that time I was a journalist in Bonn and in Berlin later, and the that time finance minister of Germany, Mr. Theo Weigel, in a background information talk told me, you know, with the Maastricht criteria we have an iron bound for the euro, and the euro will become as strong as the Deutsche Mark at that time. And 10 years later, they wiped it away, they wiped it from the table, and they did each and everything to save the euro, which means my country already is in debt by approximately 1.5 to 2 billion euros, which we have actually to pay if the euro will fail, to Greece and other countries when we guaranteed for the loans we had given to them, to Spain, to Portugal, to Greece, and much more concerning Italy, and ladies and gentlemen, much, much more concerning is France. And the debt of France is tremendous. Nobody is telling us about that, but France is already at risk at the financial market, and Italy, as you know, as well. The critic of the euro, the critic of this euro bureaucrats in Brussels, some 30 to 50,000, working there without being elected by our voters in the European Union. The European Commission, which is not elected by anybody in the European Union, can create and decide laws which we all as members of the European Union have to follow. I'm in the homeland of democracy. How is it possible? How is it possible that we created commissions and Räte, as we say in German, who are able to create each and every law without getting it signed by the parliaments? And I'm very much surprised that the people in Europe accept this. And we say, this can't be. We are convinced that this is the wrong way for Europe. And when it comes to the euro currency, we are even more concerned, because we all know when it comes to money, any friendship will end. And then the euro will not unite, the euro will divide Europe. And this, ladies and gentlemen, we don't want any more in the future times, for the sake of our countries and the European population. Some years later, in 2015, the German Chancellor and the German government behaved in the same way, when we, by surprise, got hundreds of thousands of refugees from the Middle East, not only from Syria. I mean, you know that the population of Syria doubled in their times, because so many people said in Germany that they are Syrian origin, that we were surprised that there were so many, you know. And they came to Europe, and each and every country opened the border. Why? Because they did exactly know what the destination of this folks was. It was Germany, because Germany is paying the highest social welfares, and so they passed through Austria, and they passed through Turkey, of course, and through Hungary at that time as well, Romania, the Balkan states, and so on. The intention of these people, to me, were quite strange. I tell you why. I'd been posted in, you know it better than many people else, than any other people. I was posted in India for about 13 years as a journalist, and for a certain while under Brishul, as you know. And, you know, I was in charge not only for India, I was in charge for South Asia, and this means for Afghanistan and Pakistan and Sri Lanka and so as well. I've seen in my life, it has taken me around a bit, I would say about 200 refugee camps, wherever some crisis came up or war was going on and so. And there was the UN helping these people. They established, first of all, tents, then they came with covers and with health support and food support, the World Food Program and so on. So it was, let's say in a certain way, an automatic system which worked in each and every refugee camp. And when me as a journalist, when we entered this camp, you just stop at the gate and you ask, where are the UN guys? And the folk would have said, yeah, go to the left or the right tent, and they are there and there. And then they organized it, good or bad, but they organized it in a certain way. But I've done this job for about 38 years. I never before 2015, recognized that a group of refugees would move over 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers to another continent. So the question must be accepted. Why? Why suddenly hundreds, thousands of people went crossing the dangerous Mediterranean Sea in small boats and so walking through Turkey, walking through the Balkan states, which is a quite dangerous thing sometimes. So, and at the same time, by the way, the WHO, the UNHCR, the refugee program of the United Nations, were asking for money, and they were begging for money, because, as a colleague of mine from the second German television reported, until 2015, the refugees got about $30 a month for each and every person, $30 a month. And the refugees said, well, it is not much, but we can survive with $30. And exactly in 2015, the Western countries stopped the support for the UNHCR, so they were forced to reduce this money to $9 or $7. And with this small amount, they were not able to survive, not even in that camp. And then they started to move. So maybe there is a much bigger idea behind it than just having, by surprise, a wave of refugees into Europe. And I put it up to you to make up your mind who is behind it. However, in autumn 2015, we got so many people, I think 90,000 people, at some days, or within a week, 90,000 people, that the German Minister of Interior, who was in charge for that, said we must shut the borders. And he already talked with his federal police officers, organizers. Federal police was posted at the border already. The entire system worked on the day to say we stop, we close our borders. And in September 2015, Chancellor Merkel, while she got the information, this ma'am will create bad pictures, be sure, when the Germans are closing the border. And she decided, just she, we won't do it. And then this plan was given up. This, as in your country, is against the German law. It is against the German constitution. And for us, it was the argument that we are urgently needed in this country, like within the Euro discussion, because there was no member of parliament in the Deutsche Bundestag who said, Mrs. Merkel, you have to ask the German parliament if you want to change this law or if you want to change the constitution. And you did it without asking the German parliament. And this is a crime. And we were... and we are the only party saying it is a crime and not talking around it. It is a crime. But nobody not a single member in the parliament stood up and complained to the German Chancellor. And then you see the condition of the German parliament and the bravery you find under the German parliamentaries. This, to be frank, was the second initial start of AfD, because suddenly a certain number in our country recognized, well, there is a group of people and they try to stop this migration, which is now up to about 1.5 million people. Just refugees, migrants. I wouldn't call them invaders. You know why? Because we would do the same. Imagine Donald Trump will offer us $6,000 to come to the United States and get it for free. Who won't go? Who won't go? Of course they go. They come for economic reasons. And I always mention in my election rally, have been lived in this area, I can imagine a family in Bangladesh. And let's say there are brother and a sister, Hassan and Hasina. Hasina is working in a garment factory and she earns the minimum wage of $30 a month. $30 a month, 10 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Hassan makes it, however, via Turkey or the Mediterranean to Germany. And then after months, she gets the first phone call. And she will react in the same way we do. Hassan, finally you call me. How are you? I'm fine. Are you healthy? Yes, everything is okay. Do you have a job? Well, the Germans give me about $160 a month. Hey, Hassan, that's a great job you got. Actually, Hasina, it's not a job. I get it for free, and I get accommodation, and I get some food in addition to that. So, latest, at that point, Hasina became unconscious. Right? Of course. Working 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for $30, and her brother gets so much money. And by the way, Western Union, you know that is this money transfer by telephone, had the highest income in 2015 when some 15 billion euro were dedicated to the Middle East by Western. Only Western Union. They make their biggest business in 2015. So then you can imagine what happened. Hassan took this $160 or 145, 143 euros. He took about 60 to 70. He went to Western Union and sent, of course, the money to his family because the family has borrowed the money, okay, from the uncle, from the grandpa, and from sisters and brothers and so on, to get Hassan to Europe. And therefore Hassan has to earn money here and to send it. You know it all. Always the same procedure. And now they wait till Hasina can come as well, and her children maybe. And this all is financed by the beautiful German welfare service. And I have learned that about 36% of the total amount we pay in our welfare system is paid to people with foreign origin. 36%. So we think we won't help, by the way, Hassan, because Hassan comes from a culture and a religious background, and maybe an ethnic background as well, and with an education which doesn't fit so properly, not into England and not into Germany, because even at the cashier, at the supermarkets, it is quite difficult to program this. How you say, cash case, or you know what I mean. So he won't make it. And all these people with a low education will end in the filthiest jobs Europe can offer. And this can't be the idea of having people who were not coming officially for work, who asked for asylum. And asylum means that if they are really Syrians and they are really from the war area, then indeed due to the German law you have to keep them until the war is over. That means asylum. And the German constitution guarantees each and everybody who is in such a miserable condition or situation that we host him for a certain while. Surprisingly, as soon as this 1.2 million showed up in Germany, there was not the most popular word asylum. With them, yes, they asked for, but under the Germans, it was integration. Integration for what? Asylum means for a certain while and then they go back. No, suddenly they said we must integrate them. And again, the AfD is opposing against that. There is not a single word in our constitution talking about integration. So check if the situation is still dangerous in their home country, yes or no, and if no, send these people home immediately. And you know, we have now the situation that in Syria, with the help of the Russian president, no doubt about that, the Assad regime succeeded. Now we can discuss Mr. Assad. Is he a nice guy or a bad guy? Do we like him or we don't like him? I was very close to the former German minister Hans-Dietrich Genscher, who once said, after Mikhail Gorbachev was taken under house arrest, you know, when the hard blockers from the Communist Party tried to re-establish the communist system under Gorbachev. And we were, while the unification went on, we were so much in talks with Mikhail Gorbachev and Eduard Shevardnadze and so on. So Kohl, Genscher, and so they did know both persons very well, of course. So in a certain way they made friends. And Genscher said 2 days after Gorbachev was taken under house arrest, well, this is a pity that our friend Mikhail is under house arrest, but actually we have to talk as well to those people which have right now the power in Moscow. There is a nice word which he created and it's used all over the world. This is, ladies and gentlemen, realpolitik. This is realpolitik. You have to accept the situation because you can't change it. And in Syria now, Mr. Assad has won this war. If you don't like it or like it, it doesn't matter. He did. And then it must be our intention, because we are convinced that we have to follow a realpolitik in German interest as you in the British interest. And our first interest is to get these people back home. And if the situation is peaceful over there, we must support each and everything to stabilize Syria and to stop the fighting over there. And surprisingly, the Western countries try to do everything, even with supporting the Islamic terrorists, only that Mr. Assad should not succeed. Actually, I've been to Syria in former times. I saw churches there. I saw monasteries, mosque as well, of course. Even the Jewish community was living over there. Gentlemen, ladies, I would support such a society with Mr. Assad instead of the Islamic terrorists which has ruled the area for such a long time. And then we have, after all that happened, and we are now confronted with so many million people in our country which are, of course, challenging the social welfare system, we have people who have been working for 45 years, hard, who paid into the national rent insurance, and now they come out with 600, 700, 800 euros per month. People looking into the garbage bin on big places if there is a plastic bottle where you can get a refund. So actually, my people are closer to me than anybody else, and I think that's a very, very natural habit. And I don't understand, it was mentioned before, why somebody has a problem with that. So we should support our people first. Yeah. They have been working. They had worked for the wealth of our countries for decades, and they re-established our society after the terrible World War II. So I think we are responsible, first of all, for them. And this is the reason why my party succeeded in a certain way, because, as you know, we made it with almost 13% into the German Bundestag. We are now not the second biggest party, Jeffrey, where is he? Gregory. We are the biggest opposition party. We are the biggest opposition party, and we are right now number 3 when it comes to polls. But however, it's nice. We are a little bit followed by the Greens, which is not nice at all. Because the Greens are no greens, ladies and gentlemen. The Greens are melons. They are outside green and inside deeply red, believe me, deeply red. So just by the refugee and migrant topic, we were very successful to convince a part of our voters that something has to be done. But there are a lot of other topics we can talk about, and the people are slowly, the people do recognize that they were betrayed. I don't want to talk about gender, because gender, ladies and gentlemen, is no science at all. And then we don't have to talk about the minority of 2 or 3% which try to sneak in each and every society and important organizations to get themselves represented. they are still 2 to 3% of our people. And then they are not that important as they try to be. And again, gender is no science, so let's come to the serious topics. Yeah. We have a road condition, train, trucks, and a lot of other environmental things which are in bad shape because we lived for decades on that what we have built in the 60s and 70s. And now it really happens when you cross the River Rhine in Cologne. Trucks are not allowed, and when you drive by car, you are reduced, Nancy, to 30 or so on one lane because the bridge is not that robust anymore. So, and once again, I repeat, I'm a German boy, you know. I mean, in former times, we were admired by others that we are so good in doing good work, and then you cross this bridge and you think about the condition of your country. And we have a beautiful airport, by the way, in Berlin, which should become an airport since 10 or 12 years almost. It is still not open. You must come and see it. It is a ready-made airport. Each and everything is there. But unfortunately, they had the fire extinguish system made so terribly that they don't get the final position to get it run. Now, since years, they postpone the opening of this airport, and it should have been opened in 2012, as far as I know. We expect that it's be opened at 2022. In that time frame, China built 30 airports in the same size of Berlin or even bigger, and they are all functional, they work, people fly and come. And in Germany, we still stand there and wait in little airport Tegel for our next planes, and the delays are horribly. So the condition, the environmental, the technical condition, the infrastructure of Germany is not in a good shape, and people now slowly realize it. Now they are confronted with such a bridge in Cologne, and they realize, hey, that can't be. In former times, everything went so well, and now I have to drive with 30 k's over a bridge which I can where I have to, we're able to run with some 120 or 140 kilometers, and sometimes with no speed limit, by the way, here, still a lucky country. So the people recognize that. But the much more costly thing, and I think in UK you have the same movement, are these people who are convinced that the climate will change. And the climate will change because we have so many industries and we're driving so many cars and so on. You all know, I have learned that the husband of Queen Victoria, Albert, he introduced the Christmas tree to England. This nice, wonderful little green Tannenbaum, as we say. And we love it, and maybe you love it as well. All the pictures you see from the Christmas time, you know, the children playing in white snow and with skis and so on, they come from the 19th century. Why? Because in the 19th century, we had for about 30 years a little ice age. It's called the Little Ice Age. And ladies and gentlemen, there was no big industry in Europe at that time. It is a normal procedure. The temperature is moving up and down from time to time. And then we are told that the big industries, the coal mining and so on, is responsible for that. One of my best friends was the late German astronaut Reinhard Fugger, who went with a spaceship into the blue skies, and he was a quite relaxed man. He was quite very serious. Only this topic, the climate change, made his blood boiling. When somebody but Mr. Professor, the climate change, then his face became more red, and he said, how stupid one can be. When the Pinatubo, which is a volcano, on the Philippines, is spitting once, it spits so much, how you say, coal oxide, no, CO2 into the atmosphere, than the entire Western world industries in 1 year. And then you want to tell me that we have the volcanoes on the world under control. How stupid one can be. And you remember this volcano with a strange name close to Iceland. No, Iceland, which was spitting, for days or weeks. I think that he has turned the climate registration for the next 20 years because he has spit so much CO2 into the world's atmosphere. And even our airplanes were not able to fly, you remember. So, but this is not only a nice topic to discuss, because it's the most costly thing right now in the Western world. We create windmills, windwheels, we say in German, each and everywhere in the beautiful German countryside. Yeah. And I went tonight with Andrew through your countryside, and this morning we went by train. It's beautiful, by the way, and we are lucky with this weather conditions. And when you drive through the German countryside, and you are in the Harz Mountains, for example, or in the Rhine and Mosel Valley, the Hunsrück and the Eifel, you see even on the tops of the small mountains, you see these wind wheels. Constructed and erected by the same guys who have told us 20 years ago that the German forest is dying. Now they chop 5 hectares of forest to create or to establish one of the wind wheels. So this is green reality. The forest is dying 20 years ago, and now we chop it because we need the bloody windmills. Each and every windmill needs a cable and a road because it has to be constructed. Each and every one. And a good Indian friend of us who lives in, who is in the wind business, he established in South India 1,630 windmills at one place. In a rural area. Okay, I would say this makes sense because there is one cable coming out and you can use the electricity. But don't plot them all and everywhere in the countryside. The countryside becomes ugly. We talk about the Greens, by the way. They talk about environment. We have laws to make the frogs hop over the street and you have to stop and things like this, right? Yeah, and frog tunnels and so. And the same guys ruin the German countryside and spoil the beautiful views from the mountains and the valleys, and nobody is complaining. We complain and we say this is the biggest fake in modern history. The climate change happens, yes, but not man-made. In Germany, that had cost us already close to 2 billion euro. The change of our electricity support. And now the biggest deal was, and our American friends were a little bit involved in that, was the so-called diesel fake. The diesel problem, or diesel story. I can tell you what happened. In the early 2000s, the Volkswagen management recognized that in the US, nobody drives a diesel. Just 2 to 3% of the normal vehicles, sedans and so, were diesel. Trucks, yes. Autos, as we say, no. And they say, hey, we should change that. And they, for a long time, started and planned an initiative, the Blue Diesel campaign. And they established factories in the US with a Passat, with a proper German Volkswagen diesel engine. The American competitors, Ford and Chrysler and General Motors, were not that blind to recognize. Unfortunately, I don't know why, the American blokes are not able to produce or to manufacture a proper diesel or a competitive diesel. Japanese can do, the Americans unfortunately not. And they said, hey, this will be a big thing. And we can't do anything against it, except we go to the US government and say, you should stop this German companies. And they did. They went to California, and in California they made a law that the diesel output, CO2 and Stickoxide. What is this? Anybody knows it? Stickoxide? Carbon dioxide. No, yeah, okay, carbon dioxide. They made a law reduced to, I think, 100 microgram or so, that under normal conditions a diesel engine won't do. It doesn't work. And then indeed the Volkswagen guys were tricky, and they managed a little bit with the electronics and with the computer system. And then it was a bit more than California, due to the California rules, but it was just to stop the diesel from being invented in the United States. That was the reason behind it. The environmental story was a nice surplus, nothing else. In Europe, ladies and gentlemen, 50% of the people are driving a diesel. Diesel is the most effective machine to take you with low fuel on the longest distance in comparison to any other engine. And we now have a war against the diesel. The diesel has to go. By the way, a petrol engine uses and is extincting more carbon dioxide than a diesel, more CO2 than a diesel. But that doesn't matter, surprisingly. That doesn't matter. So the German big diesel companies, and these are all of them, BMW has a diesel, Mercedes has a diesel, Volkswagen has a diesel, Audi has a diesel, and so on. They are under serious risk. And when you go at the stock market and you see how much the Volkswagen share came down, by the way, the German bank, Deutsche Bank, went down these days drastically, then you know what is going on. Today it's a German company, tomorrow it's France, and next is Italy. So we are under pressure of a criminal group which is only interested to destabilize the European, not only the German, the European economies and big manufacturers. That's the background of it. And the idea, and we were talking about the refugee camps, the idea from my point of view is we mean it seriously with this global world. By the way, you know that when they talk about the global world, they often talk about the global village. And I ask myself, why the hell do they call it a global village? My wife Nancy and I, we live in a village. And frankly, a village is, first of all, a little bit boring. Not much happens there. And the creative brains are in the cities, of course, where the universities are and so on. So why did they call it a global village? Because in this point, they were honest. They want to create a global village, a boring world. Why? Because the final target is to establish a world society. We are all equal. And in each and every continent, the income of the people is almost the same. And you can move cheap labor from one part of the world to the other part of the world. This is the intention behind it, nothing else. The idea of total equality, born unfortunately under German Karl Marx, who later would have said, sorry, it was just an idea, you know. The communist dream of equality each and everywhere got married already with a super capitalistic dream of getting cheap labor from each and everywhere. And this marriage, this wedding, ladies and gentlemen, is the most dangerous and the most challenging situation we have, and we have to fight each and every day against it. Yeah. And you will be surprised that it was a Turkish politician who expressed it so nicely. You can't say better. When he was asked after the Ottoman Empire fell at the end of World War I, and he established the Turkish Republic. And he was asked, sir, why do you focus with the modern Turkey to Europe? and not to other countries, to the Middle East or so. And he said, listen to me, there are many cultures in the world, but there is just one civilization, and that's the European. Ladies and gentlemen, Kemal Atatürk, the first president of the Turkish Republic, he had to write this in our album, that we understand who and what we are. And I think you agree with me that we just left behind the most horrible century Europe had in its history. From my point of view, we talked with Andrew and Richard and Johannes about this today. From my point of view, it was World War I when the tragedy of Europe started. And for Europe, not for Germany, for England or France or Austria, for all our European homes and countries, that was the beginning of the biggest tragedy, which we are still facing. And when one would ask, what is the challenge of the 21st century for us? Then we mentioned about the migrant wave we got into our continent. Yes, we have to find a solution for that, and we have to be strong enough to respond. But the other thing is, and therefore I mentioned the euro, which is challenging the stability in Europe as well, and the peace in Europe. The other thing is that we have to understand that we don't want the 30, 50,000 bureaucrats in Brussels giving us orders how we have to live. We want to live. We want to live in the meaning of the late President of France, Charles de Gaulle, as a union of father or motherlands, as you say. I want England as it is. I want Italy as it is. Spain and France and Germany and Denmark and the Benelux and Austria and all the others. By the way, there is one guy in Europe. You know, in Germany, in Aachen, we celebrate each year one of the finest European politicians, and we choose who it is. And even Winston Churchill got this prize a certain time ago. If we have to give the prize for somebody who fought for Europe so intensively and successfully, the prize should go to the president, I think he's Prime Minister of Hungary, Mr. Viktor Orban. He is the defender of the European culture and the European belief. And the challenge for the 21st century is in this meaning that we are a continent of nations, a continent of proud nations with a glorious history, that we make not again one mistake to go for war against each other, that we have learned from the 20th century we all will lose. Being in London, I give you one last example. In 1952, the Germans stopped the ration card system. So you were able to buy freely all goods and food and so on. In Great Britain, it was in 1957. Yes. Ironically, you can ask who won the war. Yes. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it doesn't have. When I'm talking to my French friends, I say for 500 years. We sacrificed each and every generation, with no exception, on the battlefields of Europe in fights against each other. And no country, neither Germany nor France, succeeded for a longer period of time. So after 500 years of slaughtering our young youth, we should try it peacefully. Because 500 years is a quite long time for experiments, right? So we should try it peacefully. And then I think that we have become adult enough in Europe, that we understand we want to live together. Yes, we want to Europe. We are the pro-European. We are not, who said it before? We are against the EU. We are not against Europe, because we are the seal holders of Europe. we keep the culture and we keep our tradition and we keep the glory of our history. And this should be and must be our aim, that we come together as English, as Scottish, as French, as German, as Austrians, and as Italians or Hungarians. That we know one thing and we have to promise it. And maybe next year in 2019, we have 100 years of the Versailles Treaty, which was the creator of the next war, as you know. So maybe it's a good idea to have an international conference and saying, we swear that we don't want to go into fight against each other. We are, in this meeting, a united Europe. When we behave like that, Europe has a great future, ladies and gentlemen. And keep the words of Kemal Atatürk in your mind. It is the only civilization we have on this earth. Thank you very much.
Danke.